Namaste. Brahma Vidya Peetham International joins with the global community in observing Human Rights Day, held annually on 10th December, in commemoration of the anniversary of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This declaration was proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly in Paris on 10th December 1948. The UDHR was translated into more than 500 languages, making it the most translated document in the world. It has inspired the constitutions of many newly independent states and many new democracies. In 1976, the International Covenant of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights entered into force, seeking to promote, preserve, and protect the human rights. The human rights of the right to work in just and favorable conditions, the right to social protection, to an adequate standard of living, and to the highest attainable standards of physical and mental well-being, the right to education and the enjoyment of benefits of cultural freedom and scientific progress. A series of international human rights treaties and other instruments adopted since 1945 have expanded in the body of international human rights law. They include the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, 1948, the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, 1965, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, 1979, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, 1989, and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, 2006, amongst others. As a result, virtually every UN body and specialized agency is involved to some degree in the protection of human rights. Some examples are the right to development, which is the core of the Sustainable Development Goals, the right to food, championed by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, labor rights, defined and protected by the International Labour Organization, gender equality, which is promulgated by the United Nations, women, the rights of children, indigenous peoples, and disabled persons. Each year, a theme is chosen to draw attention to a particular facet of the efforts to uphold human rights. Themes have included ending discrimination, fighting poverty, and protecting victims of human rights violations. Additionally, since 1968, which the UN designed as the International Year of Human Rights, the organization has periodically awarded a United Nations prize in the field of human rights on Human Rights Day. This year, 2020, the theme of the United Nations is Recover Better, Stand Up for Human Rights. As we navigate our way through this pandemic, we are pleased to be joined in this program hosted by Brahma Vidya Peetham International, by Swami Brahma Swarupananda Ji, our Peter Deesh and founder, His Excellency Sri Arun Kumar Sahu, the Indian High Commissioner of the Republic of India to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and two distinguished personalities and great leaders of our soil, Mr. Winston Dukaran and Dr. Bo Indradat Tiwari. In commemorating Human Rights Day 2020 here at Brahma Vidya Peetham International, we would now receive the message from His Excellency Sri Arun Kumar Sahu, the High Commissioner of India to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
I am happy to learn that the Brahma Vidya Peetham International is celebrating this year's International Human Rights Day. the theme of which is Recover Better, Stand Up for Human Rights, focusing on the challenges emanating out of COVID-19 pandemic. As you are aware, India, the world's largest democracy with a population of 1.3 billion, faced a unique challenge during the onset of the pandemic. However, it scaled up its global diplomatic outreach and humanitarian assistance to an unbelievable level. India's efforts included repatriation of over 1.5 million stranded Indian citizens, evacuation of more than 28,000 foreign citizens, assembling rapid response and medical assistance teams, and sending medical, food, and other essential supplies to affected countries. In March 2020, Prime Minister of India convened a virtual meeting of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC, to discuss a regional effort to combat the virus. He announced the creation of a SAARC COVID-19 emergency fund, to which India made a voluntary contribution of $10 million. India also dispatched teams of doctors to Nepal and the Maldives and supplied essential food grains and medicines to Afghanistan. Beyond South Asia, India expanded its assistance to countries in the Indo-Pacific region, Latin America, and the Caribbean and Africa. In several multilateral virtual fora of G20, BRICS, SCO, and others, India called for an effective global response to the pandemic and emphasized the need for globalization based on principles of fairness, equality, and humanity. During the pandemic, External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, spoke with his counterparts of Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, and Commonwealth Dominica to express solidarity and extend possible medical assistance. I am happy that since then, medical supplies have been handed over to the respective governments on behalf of the people and the Government of India. As a responsible global player, India remains committed to playing its role for international peace, prosperity, and security. I extend my best regards to Swami Brahmaswarupananda ji and Sadhvi Anandamayi Giri ji and wish them all success in their future endeavors. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Mr. Winston Dukaran, ORTT, is a politician, an economist, and an international public official. Mr. Dukaran has contributed significantly to the development and growth of Trinidad and Tobago. A professor of practice at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus, and he is currently the Secretary General of the EUCLID University, which is an intergovernmental institution of higher learning. Mr. Dukaran previously served as Central Bank Governor, Minister of Finance, Acting Prime Minister, and Minister of Foreign Affairs to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. He is the author of several distinguished publications. He received the nation's highest award, the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and was bestowed the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award from the former Indian President Shri Pranab Mukherjee for his outstanding public service in the practice of development and diplomacy.
On the green foothills of the Central Range here in Karatal, His Holiness Swami Brahma Sarupananda set the stage for this seat of learning of all holy scriptures. And I am particularly honored by his gracious invitation to bring a message on this day of inspiration and reflection that the United Nations have decreed Human Rights Day. Recover Better, Stand Up for Human Rights is a theme that the United Nations has chosen for this year. Human rights was first pronounced by Cyrus the Great, the first king of ancient Persia, after he conquered the city of Babylon in the year 539 BC. His next move was to free the slaves and declared that all peoples had the right to choose their own religion and establish racial equality. Ancient records have recognized this as the world's first charter of human rights. The right of free speech, the right to vote, and the right to a fair trial were among the early rights that preceded the Universal Declaration of Human Rights declared by the United Nations Human Rights Commission in modern times. Eleanor Roosevelt, the chairperson of the Commission, defined it as the international Magna Carta of all men everywhere, and the foundations of which were the right to equality, freedom from discrimination, the right to life, liberty, and personal security, freedom from slavery, and freedom from torture and degrading treatment. Recently, the government of India kindly asked me to commemorate Gandhi's 150th birth anniversary, which they published in a prestigious collection this year in 2020 and circulated it worldwide. This is what I wrote. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, to me, is a central figure in the freedom of life that I now share, and for many, many millions of people across the globe in our times. His political journey for truth, justice, and liberty for mankind remains the singular expression of his life and uplifts us each time it rains and when we falter in upholding our public values. I went on to say, an exceptional leader, perhaps the finest political strategist in our century. Gandhi reminded us of the strength of power of moral philosophy as the anchor for building authentic political movements. Freedom and public values are the cornerstone of the quest for human rights. No wonder the struggle for human rights gave vent to wars for freedom and contests in political choices in society. Human rights, therefore, became the heart of authentic political movements. We must not be complacent about human rights, as we are called upon always to fight for it and to build global solidarity in its name, and let it be an integral part of our shared humanity. In my own political days, I urged our nation to adopt the new watchwords of truth, justice, and freedom, rooted in the key philosophies of Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. It was, in my way, a call to stand up for human rights. Standing up for human rights is a moral imperative of our times. It is a time for deep reflection and deliberation. In the Vedas, rights are complemented with duties. one has to perform his or her duties. This is the best way to protect human rights of every citizen. Faithfully performing your duties is what the individual can properly do to sustain human rights. At the level of the society, and in accordance with Vedic tradition, violation of human rights not only disturbs peace and harmony in the society, it is also highly detrimental to development. One therefore cannot think of good governance without respect for human rights. This makes human rights one of the burning issues of the contemporary period in the world of politics. The former High Commissioner of India to Trinidad and Tobago, Guru Shankar Gupta, in a fascinating book entitled Unraveling the Mysteries of Life, Modern Science and Ancient Wisdom, spoke about there is only one reality, but several interpretations of it. He invoked the notion of the power of empty space. Space, he said, must be created for reflection. It is constant, unaffected by violent movements and radical action, and must be created to nourish the intellect and the emotion on what he defines as the mysteries of life. This is the space that we are in today, in this ashram, as we articulate the power of human rights at home and abroad. Swamiji has shown great foresight in providing this space for us on the green foothills of central Trinidad, and to provide us with a seat of learning of the Holy Scriptures. It is an invaluable service to our society, and we owe him a debt of gratitude for all times. I also pay homage to Sadhvi Amada, General Secretary, for selfless service to our communities and devotion to a noble mission. Together, and with the loyal congregation before us, we have gained so much from the Vedic philosophy and the teachings from Swamiji, as he too unravels the mysteries of life each day with his words and wisdom. I am indeed grateful for Swamiji's choosing me to share this message with you, the sacred audience, on this auspicious day in the calendar of the United Nations. Thank you.
Dr. Boindradat Tiwari has been serving Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean in many dimensions throughout his working life. He has served in education, rising to the high post of Principal and Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago. He nurtured and built the Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business from inception and facilitated the creation of the College of Science, Technology and Arts of Trinidad and Tobago. He has served in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago in both the House of Representatives and the Senate for 15 years, in government as well as opposition. He has twice been a Cabinet Minister of Trade, Enterprise and Tourism, and also Planning and Sustainable Development. Dr. Tiwari was an International House Scholar at the University of Chicago and a Fulbright Fellow at the Pennsylvania State University. He has written 4 books and several articles on economic and sustainable development, higher education and literature, culture, including one on V.S. Naipaul.
Namaskar. The COVID crisis, which came to a head around March of 2020, and which rages through the world as a swiftly spreading disease and as a killer of humans, has also laid bare the inequities and vast inequalities, and has enhanced our understanding of the challenging vulnerabilities in our world in which 8 billion human beings live. These inequities, inequalities, and vulnerabilities exist within countries, across regions, and among countries at different stages and levels of development. COVID has also attacked the human race at a time when questions have been raised about the sustainability of a consumer, demand-driven capitalist order. Climate change and global warming have forced the world to rethink industry priorities and practices as well as human behavior in a context in which these two things threaten the continued good health of planet Earth. And sustainable development based on a balance of 5 principles: economic viability, environmental conservation and ecological sensitivity, community participation and cultural consideration and respect, as well as the principles of inclusion and equity, has been identified by the United Nations as the way forward. And in this regard, 17 goals have been identified after a deep consultative process with nations large and small across the world. These issues, economic prosperity, climate responsiveness, and resilience and sustainable development processes and goals, are perpetually in tension, especially in addressing issues of inclusion, equity, vulnerability. It is against this background, as we approach a time of delivery of a vaccine, that the issue of human rights and a better recovery model, processes, methodology, and outcome become a paramount consideration. The United Nations theme, Recover Better, Stand Up for Human Rights, gains even more poignancy when one appreciates that the COVID pandemic has given governments all over the world sweeping powers in the face of increasing powerlessness of individuals faced with the dilemma of lives or livelihoods, and have placed businesses and institutions, even independent ones, in a dependency relationship with their government. Moreover, we have seen that stock markets can soar while real economies are ravaged at high human costs, and that therefore there is a very real tension between economic democracy and concentrated economic and financial power in the hands of a few. The increased tendency towards greater concentration of power in the hands of increasingly authoritarian governments, as COVID conditions have created a kind of carte blanche, and greater concentration of economic and financial power in the hands of the already wealthy, lays the foundation and sets the tone for the continuing tension between democracy on the one hand and oligarchy on the other, within individual countries as well as in the world at large. This is likely to be a global phenomenon, a feature of the post-COVID economy, polity, and world. Human rights have become fragile in a world caught up in survival as countries wrestle for space amidst changing geopolitics, transforming technologies and different value chain priorities, new logistical consideration, and a transforming competitive order. This is an even more important reason to stand up for human rights and to be vigilant about how post-vaccine recovery is managed in our own countries. Charity does begin at home, and how it is managed the world over. There can be many casualties of freedom, of opportunity, and of fairness on the road to recovery from this pandemic. Individual rights can be ignored and lives sacrificed. Families can be set back, communities can be marginalized, and the poor and vulnerable in an increasingly unequal world of widening gaps within and among countries, driven to oligarchic structures, tendencies, and dispositions, can simply be ignored or left to their own devices, unable to summon the will to survival. In my own country, Trinidad and Tobago, about 25 to 30% of our population live in poverty. Our country had a 5-year-long recession before COVID, with closure of businesses, freeze on new hirings, loss of jobs. The numbers of those struggling to survive may well have increased significantly. The same in different proportions will likely be true of other countries. When one looks at the United States of America, the numbers filing for unemployment relief, the increasing demand for free food distribution in that country, which is a wealthy country which had a thriving pre-COVID economy, one can gauge the severity of the challenge in lesser endowed countries. More than ever, we must be vigilant in Trinidad and Tobago, in the countries in which you who are reading or listening to this broadcast live, and across the world wherever at-risk populations exist. We must commit to a human rights watch as the consequences of this pandemic are managed post-COVID, beginning with the fair and equitable distribution and effective logistical management of the distribution of the vaccine itself for effective reach, and the economic and political management post-vaccine to achieve inclusion, equity, and sustainability. I sincerely commend Swami Brahma Swanupananda Ji and the Brahma Vidya Pitam International for taking this initiative to support the Recover Better project of the United Nations. And I thank Swamiji for inviting me to contribute. Om Shanti.
We would now be joined by our founder and Peethadhish of Brahma Vidya Peetham International, Swami Brahma Swarupanandaji, as we receive his thoughts on Human Rights Day 2020.
Hari Om, Hari Om. My dear brother and sister, now we are celebrating International Day of Human Rights. During 1948, United Nations decided to present a charter, big charter of the human rights in Paris. So they have become a very good picture of human rights. Purpose was how the human society, human being, they will be happy personally, but how to live collectively, how I-ness will be we-ness, I-ness, individuality, and then we-ness, collectivity. So both thoughts they presented to make a happy human society. So from the 1948 up till now, many years passed. Question is a human right structure has come on this earth after so great development of science and technology. All the means of happiness we have, to medicine to aeroplane, and all transport, all type of education. But up till now, we didn't achieve the goal of human right. Due to this, Brahmavidya Peetham decided to this movement of human right to start. And then people think, what is the value of the human rights? In European Renaissance period, all the scholars of the world, they decided one manifesto of the human happiness is necessary. They have given and they presented, but everything depends on the three pillars: liberty, equality, and fraternity. In so many organizations, they were very helpful to establish the equality and then liberty. But one thing in this thought, one was mistake. They didn't think about the fraternity or brotherhood. How to will come in the life? Up till now, they didn't give any structure of brotherhood. Brotherhood depend on some values, some morality, some character. They didn't think. They started to think through the education, through the political structure. Up till now, they didn't found the foundation of the fraternity, how human being will feel we are one, didn't feel. Because behind all this thought, spirituality was not there. Because spirituality divided in the sect, in religion, but the totality of the spirituality, they didn't think about what is necessary. That was necessary. Everybody is one, no difference. But how will be one? Physically, impossible. Educationally, not possible. Then food and cloth, not possible. Only one. That is an Indian thought. If you are thinking everybody has one soul, one spirit, one God within self. Yes, this is the ground of the unity. So this thought didn't come with the human right. So due to this, Brahmavidya started to think and develop. Many scholars in the guidance of Anandaji then is presenting all this thought. So second is everybody's, all the country, even the United Nations, they want all country, creed, caste, they should be uniformity. They live uniformity. Everybody should be better. Uniformity, it is not possible in the nature. Nature is a diversity. How with diversity will come in unity, accept the diversity, but they want to remove diversity, but uniformity, it is impossible, impossible. So this thought, ground of thought is not appropriate. So that is a necessary diversity in unity, unity in diversity. This thought also necessary, then we can make a multicultural society. Then we can make one nation, one law, one constitution, one rule, then we can. Next point is this United Nations thinking about human rights, but they are not in favor of the nationality. Every country has own nature, own attitudes, own history, and own cult. So then it is necessary to give the power of the nationality, but nationality is based on the patriotism. So all these thinkers, they are not in favor of nationality. You can't remove. So patriotism and nationality also necessary in all country. Second, if I have taken the nationality, then you think about the universality or universal thing. Universality based on nationality, then they are not thinking in human right charter. So first divinity necessary, then fraternity will come, then equality and liberty will be successful, and then human right will be helpful, but not uniformity, everybody in diversity, that we in unity in diversity. So please, on this day, think philosophy of the human right, ground thought of the human right. So it is my appeal, the United Nations think in new way human right. Maybe change, many times change. They are good, many phases human right. In 48, then 49, then 52, then 56, many type of law they presented, they applied, but up till now not. Because now every nation has the thought of imperialism, how to control other country, economically control, by weapons control, by political pressure control. So this thought is not necessary. Many countries have thinking a thought of imperialism, how to control the other country, poor country, and then weak country, and third country. So that is not good. Change the thought, change the philosophy, change the ground, then human right would be success. So that is today, that is my message. Brahm Vidya Peetham, please think about human right and be successful, how human will be happy on this earth, on this planet. Hari Om Tassam. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasisyate. Hari Om. Shanti Shanti.
Brahma Vidyapeetham International would like to thank all our distinguished speakers who have presented their thoughts on human rights in this Human Rights Day 2020 program. We have joined with the international community in commemorating this event, and all our members thank you very much for your great contribution and thoughts to this very significant and important day, Human Rights 2020. Namaste.